my stilts. They were
your stilts, yeah.
It was great. And the stilts, they were the same stilts. And when I put them on, it was amazing to see all of the wear and tear that we had put on them making Rogue One, where you could see it, the scuffs and all of that stuff. They were like, oh, these are mine.
Everyone, we are here with the cast and creator of Andor, who is going to break down everything about season 2. And to begin, I'm going to start with Cassian Andor himself, Diego Luna. Diego, at the very beginning of the first episode, we see this kind of comical scene with you driving or piloting a TIE interceptor, maybe the funniest sequence in the whole series. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's it. The fun is over after minute 4. No, I think there's a lot of humor in this season. I would say not that we were looking or searching for it, but it's just implicit, right? Like that one. I mean, we were not planning to do a comedic moment, but it is, yeah, it is this man battling his ignorance. Which makes it very fun, like he's against the Empire and the big problem is himself, that he doesn't know what to do with the equipment he's trying to fly. I think it's a very cool action sequence, and action is much better when there's humor around, I think.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, I don't want to necessarily call it a humorous scene, but Genevieve, the scene with you at the wedding is maybe the most, I'll say, memeable, maybe most memorable scene from the whole season as well, where Mon is going through some things. She's dancing. She lets her inhibitions loose. Tell us about filming that scene and what it means for your character.
It was an extraordinary day filming that. It was my second to last day on the whole of Andor was shooting that. It felt like a very beautiful crescendo, in a big piece of the end of the 3 episodes of the wedding. But Tony and I have been talking about this week. Perhaps from the outside, it looks like this beautiful Renaissance painting moment, but actually, it's a woman trying to exorcise the chaos that's in her brain. Tony said the other day about it, like she's dancing to keep herself from screaming. So, like everything in Andor, there are layers, there is depth, there are questions.
So speaking of those layers and depth, Denise, I want to talk about Dedra for a second. Particularly towards the beginning, we see this evolution in her relationship with Syril. Tell me about the scene in the episode where Syril's mother literally comes to dinner. We learn a lot about your character. That must have been a feast as an actor.
Yeah, I mean, that really is a funny scene. But for me, Catherine Hunter is a legend. She's a theater legend. So I've known about her for so long, and the thought that I was going to get to be in a room with her and with Kyle at the same time playing these particular characters, I mean, I was so excited. But the great thing about that scene too is when you work with somebody like Catherine, she's a live wire, so she doesn't make the obvious choices. None of the actors in this show do. And so what looks like an intimidation on the page becomes a negotiation in the room. And so I went Dedra at her, but she did Edie at me. And suddenly it was like, oh, this is not. And by the end, you sort of see them as quite, I think they'd hang out. And he's like lying broken on the bed. And it was brilliant. He comes back in and she's like, more calf? And you see, I mean, Catherine is one of the greatest. It was a couple of really fantastic days. And with Ari as well, our director.
Kyle, just on the flip side, with the relationship between Syril and Dedra, well, just tell me about where we find Syril at the beginning of the season. He's climbing the ladder a bit. He has some success. He's feeling confident. How did you approach that, revisiting that character after a few years?
I felt really good. It's like, oh, good. Like, he's feeling good.
Yeah.
It was a joy being able to play with Syril, kind of showing his feathers and trying to flex that a little bit. And seeing how his relationship with Dedra is affecting him and affecting his mother and affecting his relationship to the Empire and his own desires to keep climbing up that ladder. But yeah, and then there's this whole other layer where he's getting to kind of explore playing at being a spy. So he's kind of a kid in a candy shop, I think, when you find him at the beginning of season 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So Adria, speaking of new layers, Bix has quite an evolution from season 1 to season 2 and through season 2. But tell us about where we find her literally and figuratively at the beginning of the season.
When we left Bix in season 1, you know, she was at the lowest point that someone can possibly be, thanks to Dr. Gorst. And then sort of the year gap. So when we meet her for the first time in season 2, we sort of see almost like a parallel version of Bix from episode 1, season 1. We're like, oh, I'm like kind of hopeful and seeing this kind of strong woman. You know, she's back in workwear, but you know, there's evidence that, you know, Dr. Gorst is still sort of haunting her, and it's going to take way longer than a year for her to get over this. And it's going to continue to haunt her, and part of her journey is to sort of get over it and what that means to her.
So, Tony, following that through line of Dr. Gorst, what Dedra is doing, what Syril is up to, I feel like one of the maybe most impactful through lines of Andor, especially in season 2, is we're shown time and time again that the Empire is not just the Emperor. It takes a lot of people to oppress a galaxy. Tell me about bringing all those pieces to life, showing villains with different motivations and different ways of life that is not just this one man and a throne on the Death Star.
That is how organizations work. That is, I mean, everybody who's watching the show has some experience with some large organization or worked for a large organization or complained to a large organization. They don't work the way organizations want to work. They leak and they rust and they mess up, and people want corner offices and someone wants a parking place. And for what it's worth, I'm just as empathetic with all those characters as I am with everybody else, you know, in the show. You have to write them the same way. And what's fascinating about it is how it fails. And what's fascinating about it is how the insecurities come through and the appetites and the greed. I don't know any other way to do it. I think it's real. I think people recognize it, and it makes for good drama.
I honestly think that Star Wars Fight for a Parking Space might be a really interesting
We
reality
actually have a parking space scene.
Yeah.
We do, but the governor is parked. They have a parking problem at the wedding. They don't have enough
that's
room.
true.
We actually do have that.
That's right. Alan, the fact that K2SO is back, I think fans are excited. Fans are going to be excited. You've played a lot of really amazing, impactful characters, but tell me about bringing this guy back to life, how you felt about it, what it was like being back in his, not shoes, but his metal legs.
My stilts.
Your stilts, yeah.
It was great. And the stilts, they were the same stilts. And when I put them on, it was amazing to see all of the wear and tear that we had put on them making Rogue One, where you could see it, the scuffs and all of this stuff. It's like, oh, these are mine. Well, these are mine. I put stickers on them. I put stuff on them that made them mine. And they came out of the box, and it took me a minute to remember how to put them on, but I could walk on them fine. And it was great. I was always hopeful because I knew that Tony's vision was to have it end up in Rogue One. I would be in the show since I'm in Rogue One. So I knew that there was a good chance I might be in it.
Yeah. And so this is something that I kind of want to ask to all of you. I think one of the most meaningful and interesting things about Andor as a series, as part of the Star Wars universe, is it's called Andor, but it is so much about all of your characters and so like beyond one person. But Diego, I want to ask you, I mean, as the title character of that, I imagine it must be fulfilling, though. Like, you're part of the story. You are a big part of the story. But getting to share it with everyone at this table and beyond has got to be very meaningful as well.
I think it's just an excuse. It's a story about how a revolution erupts, you know? Where does that come from? And what's the scenario for a rebellion to happen, right? So it's about community. It's about both sides of an equation, you know? There is time in this long format and in the beautiful writing of Tony to actually understand each perspectives and without judgment also. Andor makes sense because we know Rogue One.
Yeah.
You know, therefore he can be the guy that can take you through that because you know the end of that guy, you know. It is a beautiful excuse to meet all these people that would never get a film done about them, because this film is about revolution. It's about what's behind like a movement, a community movement.
Tony, I imagine that it just going back to season 1 and talking about season 2 as well, it must be it's an interesting challenge because, I mean, not a spoiler, but like everyone knows that Cassian is going to die at the end of Rogue One, and some other characters as well. I know, spoiler alert. Sorry if you haven't seen it at this point.
From 10 years ago,
All right.
there's a lot of people that actually will go to see Rogue One because of Andor, I think.
Yeah.
Right. I think when you said that yesterday at the panel, I was I thought so as well. But Tony, I mean, I imagine it's an interesting and unique challenge in which you have to create tension and you have to create a compelling story where you ultimately know the outcome. So tell us about how you find that balance in finding that.
I never worry about it. I never worried about it at all. And I've had this question before, and I have this horrible answer, which is that everybody knows they're going to die, and we have this incredibly innate suspension of disbelief. It must be some evolutionary necessity that's been baked into us, because otherwise, why would we do anything? Why would people do laundry? I mean, seriously, man, you know what's going to happen. So it's not of all the things I worry about when I'm writing, it is not an anxiety. Oh my God, you just always write it like it's at the edge of time, and the audience will always go with you. I mean, I've never felt myself that I was not concerned for his character. I've been worried. Oh my God, I know what's going to happen, and yet I'm worried. Yeah. I don't know. It's a really interesting psychological question, but it does not enter into my.
That's great. Yeah. No, totally fair.
You know what? It's like historical movies, or historical characters. We know something, we learned something about them, but we don't know why, how, what, when exactly, who was around, why was this way, another.
Abraham Lincoln is going to die.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. We're full of spoilers here. That's all the time we have today. For everything Andor, be sure to check out IGN. Thank you all so
Thank you.
much. This is wonderful. Really appreciate it.